Good afternoon, and thank you for joining us today. My name is Tim Lee. I'm a research analyst at Red Cloud Securities. I'm delighted to host a Red Cloud webinar on gold exploration in Japan today. We will hear from John Proust, Chairman and CEO of Japan Gold. During today's webinar, he will provide an overview and outlook. Then we will take questions, and you can type your questions into the chat box at any time. We'll get to as many as we can. Before we kick things off, first, we need to discuss a little fine print. During this Japan Gold webinar, forward-looking statements may be made. I would direct listeners to the company's forward-looking statements disclosure outlined on page 2 of the company's corporate presentation that can be found on the company's website, japangold.com. For Red Cloud Securities, Inc., I would highlight that this webinar is for information purposes only. It should not be considered a solicitation or a recommendation to buy or sell securities. We note that this call does not consider the particular situation or needs of individual investors, and participants should rely on their own investigation and seek their own professional advice before investing. Please see our most recent research located on the Red Cloud website for specific disclosures on Japan Gold. So we have Japan Gold presenting today. As the company's name suggests, it is focused on gold exploration in Japan. Japan has a rich history of gold mining, but it is only in recent years that it's opened the doors for foreign companies to explore in the country. And Japan Gold was a first mover, acquired a significant package of interesting projects with numerous past producing mines and other showings. With that, I now turn it over to John to update our audience on the company.
Thank you, Tim. I appreciate the introduction, and welcome everybody to our webinar today. I'm pleased to be able to share an update with you as we get further on towards the end of the year. There's been an awful lot of activity, and our company, as you may know, is very, very busy with 31 projects in Japan. And those 31 projects are really bifurcated into two areas. One is that we have a countrywide alliance with Barrick Gold Corporation, and that covers 29 of our 31 projects. And outside the Barrick alliance, we have two projects that are supported by Newmont, where Newmont has the joint venture right of first refusal on those projects. So if we want a joint venture partner, we go to Newmont first, but we fully operate those 100% today, and we fully fund those two projects. On the Barrick Alliance projects, Barrick solely funds the advancement and evaluation of the 29 projects, and we're delighted to have them as our partner. So with that, I'll share a presentation with you that I've prepared for today, and I'll walk you through the highlights of what we've accomplished this year so far, and give you an indication of what's coming up, what you should look forward to in the near future and through the end of the year. As Tim mentioned, our forward-looking statements are contained on our slide 2 here, and I recommend that you have a look at those at your leisure. So in 2021, I picked some highlights that are basically snippets of the various areas of our activities to give you a sense of how busy we've been. The first one highlights an activity that occurred in April of 2021. When, as part of our evaluation of the 29 projects, we were reviewing a project called the Togi project, which is part of the Barrick Alliance. And we had done one of the two types of tests or sampling that we are doing across all 29 projects. In this case, we had done a sampling program where we had taken rocks and soil and stream sediment samples across the Togi project, which is approximately 8 kilometers by 3 kilometers. And it covers an abandoned gold field that was being operated after the turn of the century, the turn of not this century, but the previous century, and was ultimately again abandoned. So as we took these samples across the 8 kilometers, we found particularly high grades of gold quite uniformly across this project area. And so we collaborated and discussed this with Barrick, and we decided that the right thing to do would be to acquire all the similar type of geology in the region. And so we went to the Japanese government and the Ministry of Economy, Trade and Industry and we applied for prospecting rights over 145 square kilometers surrounding this project area. And as you can see by the fourth bullet on this slide, in August of this year, the area was reserved for us by the government. So we're very pleased to put that together as one of our high priority projects. The second bullet down refers to our drilling program that commenced at the end of May or early June. And this is on one of the projects outside the Barrick Alliance that we are working with Newmont on. Now, those two projects that are in the Newmont relationship are our two most advanced projects in the company. So we've already done the preliminary work, the mapping, the geology, the geophysics, the geochemistry. We've completed that work. And so now we've identified significant prospects, and it's all about drilling. So we're drilling those prospects. And what we're doing is we are drilling we started with our first prospect, and it's really based on success. So we drill initial holes at a prospect. If we like what we see, we're fortunate that we have our own drilling division and our own 4 diamond core drill rigs, so we can actually continue on with our drilling program. But so if we have success, we just keep on going. If we're not as happy with the results, then we move on to other prospect areas. So I'm pleased to say that when we drilled this very first prospect, it's called the Ryuo prospect, and we'll be looking at that in more detail in a moment, we came up with some very strong drill results. And so those results were the drilling of the first 3 holes, just to kind of give us the flavor of that prospect, were drilled in June and July. And in September, if you look at the last bullet on our page, in September, we were fortunate to put out positive results there. And we'll discuss those in a few moments. The third bullet refers to a decision that we made in July, in early July, to fund the company more fully to really be able to advance the 2 non-Barrick Alliance projects. So what we've been considering up to that point in July was, should we go to Newmont or others to consider entering into joint ventures on those 2 projects, or should we advance them ourselves? And so we really engaged with a number of our stakeholders and discussed it internally. And we thought, look, we carefully, in conjunction with Newmont, advanced these 2 projects. We've identified a number of key prospect areas. It makes more sense for us to advance these projects ourselves now with our own funds, as opposed to getting into perhaps a dilutive joint venture arrangement. So we went to the market, and I've got to say, on a personal note, I was quite concerned about where the market was at. We've all lived through the pandemic. We're unsure as to what the summer would hold and what the fall would bring, etc. And so I felt that it was really important that if the capital was available, that we would do that. So we actually went to a series of institutions, and we were looking for sort of the $10 to $12 million range. And we were really pleased to find that we had $35 million of interest in financing the company at that time. And so we considered our needs for this year and next year on the 2 projects outside the Barrick Alliance. And ultimately, we took $17 million, which included working capital to carry us through the next 2 years, as well as the funds available for funding the drilling programs on those projects and advancing other prospects that we've identified as well. The financing was done at 35 cents a share, without a warrant. Our current share price today is trading approximately 30 cents. So we were fortunate to do it certainly at a premium to where the market is trading now. And I did note that through the summer, the price of gold came down twice, about $100. It certainly has continued to recover after those drops, and is trading over $1,800 now. But in any event, we're well funded now to take those 2 projects forward, and then we're fully funded by Barrick to advance the other 29 projects. So let me move on here. Our investment rationale, and I like to just throw this slide in just as a quick refresher. As Tim mentioned, we are the first mover in Japan. We had a 4.5-year head start before any other company came in and acquired a project area in Japan. And that really gave us a good chance to evaluate the country, to look at the closed mines that existed in Japan since the Second World War when they were closed by the government, and to really go out and help prepare the permitting process in Japan, to really help guide that along to get a very, very globally competitive permitting process, and then to pick up our 31 projects. And we now have over 47 historic gold mines. We've been able to put in place the alliance with Barrick, which we did approximately 2 years ago, and move in with significant investors and strong institutional support. We've also bolstered our management team, and we'll look at that slide in a moment. So this slide is one you may have seen before, and it just highlights the three main islands of Japan: Hokkaido in the north, Honshu, the long central island, and Kyushu in the south. But what I'd like to point out on this slide is that while we have 31 projects, as we've now been gathering the information, evaluating the Barrick Alliance projects through our geochemistry reviews and our geophysical surveys, we've now found areas that are highly anomalous in gold. And in some cases, they've spilled outside our project areas. And so we very quickly and carefully picked up that additional ground. And in the first half of 2021 alone, as the banner says at the top, we've expanded our portfolio by 15% to now exceed 2,200 square kilometers of mineral rights. So we are in a very, very positive position. The other point that I'd make is that there's really 5 major gold provinces in Japan. And so one being up in northern Hokkaido, another one being in sort of west central Hokkaido, one down in Honshu, the long central island, where there's a peninsula that is on the sort of the top side of just about the Honshu name that you can see. And I'll see if I can highlight this with our sketch tool, but right in this particular area, that's another. So we've got one gold province up here, one down in here. The third one that I've mentioned on Honshu, and then one down in mid-central Kyushu, and then the most prolific gold-producing area of the country down in the south. And we now dominate all major gold provinces in Japan. And so we've been very fortunate that we could be as quick to move in those areas and be able to accumulate this large portfolio that we have. The one other area that I like to point out is that, of course, Japan now hosts one of the highest grade tier 1 gold mines in the world. Now, this mine was discovered in 1981 by the government, who was the only explorer in Japan, as no Japanese mining companies have any mandate to explore in Japan. So the Japanese government, the Metal Mining Agency of Japan, in the southern island of Kyushu, drilled a exploratory hole down in the southern Kyushu epithermal gold province, testing the thickness of the younger volcanic rocks that are sitting above the older basement rocks. And they're at about 200 meters of depth, right in the center of this property area. This is where they discovered the Hishikari gold mine. Went into production in 1985, and Hishikari has now produced over 8 million ounces at between 30 and 40 grams per ton, and has still over 5 million ounces of reserves remaining. So it's a wonderful world-class tier 1 gold mine, and we fully surround it. And we have over 84% of all prospective ground in that gold province, in that Hokusatsu region. So to move on, we'll discuss the Barrick Alliance and where we stand today. So the Barrick Alliance started in February of 2020 when the CEO of Barrick, Mark Bristow, announced it at the BMO mining conference in Florida. And the first phase of the alliance is really evaluation of all 29 projects. And the way we're doing that is we're doing geochemistry reviews and geophysical surveys over all 29 projects. And so that's approximately 2,000 square kilometers. It's a very, very large area. The way we're doing it is our teams are walking up all the streams and waterways, and they are taking stream sediment samples and rock samples, and then we assay those for gold and multiple elements across all 2,000 square kilometers. In addition to that, we have geophysical contractors who will be doing gravity surveys across all the 29 projects to find all the gravity highs, because the areas that are gravity highs historically have been the areas where the major past producing and the current Hishikari mine have been located. So Barrick wanted to know where were all the gravity highs. When you start overlaying those, the geochemistry, which highlights areas that are anomalously high in gold, and the geophysics, which show you the structures, the gravity highs that can support the upflow of mineral-rich fluids from deeper boiling zones, those become the areas of real focus. Now, under the Barrick Alliance, Barrick has 2 years to complete that review. So that concludes in February 2022, just a few months away from now. And at that point, Barrick has to identify which projects they want to advance and which projects they don't want to advance. Now, if Barrick doesn't want to advance a project, we've done all the work ourselves with our teams being the operator. And so that information will be ours to keep. Barrick will have no residual interest, even though they've funded all the work on those projects. And we'll be able to advance those projects ourselves or advance them in joint ventures with other third parties. And there's quite a large number of other third parties that are interested in getting a foothold into Japan. If Barrick likes a project, well, the only way they can earn an interest is completing a pre-feasibility study. So they've really got to get their running shoes on with us and start advancing those projects. When they complete and fund a pre-feasibility study, they earn a 51% stake. And then when they complete and fully fund a bankable feasibility study, they can get to a 75% interest in a project. That means that we, Japan Gold, are fully carried through to a 25% stake, right through that bankable feasibility study. So we're in a very, very positive position. As you can see on this slide in the gold box, we've now covered 95% of all project areas with geochemistry and 91% with geophysics. And so we've moved very, very quickly, and we've got great accolades from Barrick in terms of our ability to operate fully through the pandemic, to complete meaningful and large-scale programs and come up with significant results. And so that's very high praise from Barrick, and we really appreciate that. So where has that gotten us? Well, this is a snapshot that you may have seen in the past in our previous news releases that just have shown the islands, in this case Hokkaido and Honshu, and within the top area, which are two of the islands, and then you can see those project areas listed across the top. But it just shows you have we done the geochemistry and have we done the geophysics. And then in the bottom segment of the slide, Kyushu, the island of Kyushu, the same thing. But really, I want to direct you to the bullet points at the top of this slide. So first of all, people say, well, how much has Barrick spent? Well, we started the Barrick Alliance in mid-2020, and Barrick spent $2 million US in 2020 advancing the evaluation of the projects. This year, they've spent $4 million advancing. So we're up to $6 million US advancing the 29 projects. It's really the third data point that I want to highlight for you, though, because we've now got the information coming back from the 29 projects, and we've got information in hand from 20 of the projects. And from those 20 projects alone, we've already identified 39 significant gold anomalies of high interest, which is a very large number. So we have now specialist teams that are out in the field following up on those 39 gold anomalies. Where this is all leading is that in November, from November 22nd to 24th, we're holding the Barrick Alliance Summit or workshop, and it's being held in Vancouver as opposed to Japan, where we would prefer to hold it. We're holding it in Vancouver because of the travel restrictions. And approximately 20 people from Barrick and Japan Gold are flying in from all over the world. So we can spend 3 days together to carefully go through all 29 projects, rate and rank those projects and the prospects within those projects, and help Barrick make decisions relative to which projects they would like to advance. So we're really looking forward to that and reporting back to our investors and shareholders after that summit. So that's an important piece for us. I wanted to, all right, and I mentioned to you, I'm just going to skip back a couple of slides just to focus on where I'm going to show you now. So I mentioned on this slide that we had different project areas, but in this one particular area on the island of Honshu, there is a peninsula called the Noto Peninsula, which is one of the more remote areas of Japan. Now, when we look at Japan and historically where significant gold production has come from, there's an island that's northeast of that peninsula called Sado Island, which is where on that island, the second largest past producing gold mine in Japan was located. So as I mentioned, we picked up a field called the Togi Gold Field, and we have been very, very pleased with our results there. So I'm now going to blow up the Togi Gold Field for you and just slide ahead a couple of slides. And here's the Togi Gold Field. So again, this is an abandoned gold field. It's 8 kilometers from the southwest to the northeast. It's about 3 kilometers wide. And the brighter colors that you can see sort of run continuously from the southwest to the northeast, those are all areas where we've had very good and significant gold results. So then if I take you to the next slide, as I mentioned, we then went to the government and we applied for 145 square kilometers of all the similar geology in the area. And that brown shaded area that you can see around the Togi project are the areas that have been reserved for us. Newmont, in conjunction with Irving Resources, have now also come very aggressively into this Noto Peninsula area, and they've picked up 4 blocks of ground. So this is becoming very, a very interesting area, a very popular area. But we're so fortunate to have been there first and to have picked up the core Togi project. So I'm very pleased about that. So now we're going to move outside the Barrick Alliance to our 2 projects that are in conjunction with Newmont. So again, just to repeat that, so we have them 100%. We solely fund the advancement of those projects, but we've given Newmont the right to be our joint venture partner. And the way that works is that if we want Newmont as our joint venture partner, we'll design the terms of a joint venture, we'll take those to Newmont, and then Newmont can either accept those or reject those. And if they do reject them, then we can take those same terms and we can show them to Barrick or to any other third parties. But today we're well funded through our financing to advance these 2 project areas. And it's all about drilling. So the one project up in the north, up in Hokkaido, is the Ikutahara project. And then down in the south in Kyushu is the Ora Takamine project. And our activities are really focused now on the Ikutahara project, in part because Hokkaido is more seasonal. So we want to get all our work done there by early to mid-December. So 3 of our Diamond Core drill rigs are active up there now, and we're moving ahead on drilling prospects. And so the first prospect that we started drilling at the end of May or early into June and July with our first 3 scout holes there is the Ryuo prospect. And I'm going to show you that in a moment. And then we have other prospects that I've highlighted. As we get towards the end of the year, then our focus turns to the Ora Takamine project for further review and refinement of our programs there. So I'm going to blow up the Ikutahara project to show you that. A number of you may have seen this map before, but I'm going to give you just a little bit more background. So first of all, this slide is a geology map. So the older basement rocks are the light blue. The younger yellowish color areas, that's the volcanics that are sitting up on top of the basement. So the younger volcanics. And when we look and analyze at the historic mining that's been done in Japan, and say the Hishikari mine as an example, those are generally found right at the interface between the volcanics and the basement, where the volcanics have thinned out enough that the basement is starting to show through. And so this area is one of those ideal areas where we've got the basement and the volcanics thinning out and the basement showing through. On this particular slide, I've highlighted in red various prospect areas that we're actively following up on or drilling now. So the first prospect area is the Ryuo prospect, which is a single past producing mine, which is one of 20 mines that you can see highlighted on this slide. They were all past producers that were in production but closed by the government in 1943 and have never reopened. And there's been limited exploration and no drilling till we've come along in this area for exploration. So to look at the Ryuo prospect, we've got that prospect. We've then got the North Kitano prospect, which covers 5 historic mines, and we're getting our drill targets refined there and our permit applications through. Then we've got the Kitano gold prospect itself, where there was significant historic mining of gold from surface pits, and we're trying to find the feeder zones, the source of the gold there. And so we've got a number of drill holes that are being permitted through this area. And then there's a very interesting valley where the further to the south, the Saroma Valley, which is an area that's a valley that's about 4 kilometers long, that has sort of incised into the volcanics, and it covers 3 historic mines. So that's a prospect area we really like. But let's look at the Ryuo prospect and what we've done there so far. So this is an outline of the Ryuo mine. The Ryuo mine was actively operating from 5 sites on the mine right up till 1943, and the grades were very, very high from this area. What you see on this slide is interesting. You can see the yellow, which is that volcanic rocks, but there's a certain type of rock called rhyolites, which are very good hosts that we've been identifying in the area, which we think is a good area that will host the gold mineralization. We call this the flying pink pig. And so you have to sort of turn your head to the left, but you can see that image might show through. In any event, as I mentioned, there's 5 different areas. There's one area, the Jinja vein up in the north, and I'm just going to turn on my highlighting here. So this is the Jinja vein area here. And then we've got the Shui vein area over here. And we've got the Tasai area here. And then we've got the Ryuo area down here. And then finally, we've got the Buryu area down in the south. So 5 significant areas across about 1.5 kilometers. Those are the areas we're targeting. So what we did initially, and I'll turn this off and I'm going to turn this back on for you, is we drilled 3 initial scout holes. So the first hole is this hole that's right here, that drilled under the old workings there. The second hole that we drilled was at the north end of the Shui vein system. And then the third hole that we drilled was a little further south under the Ryuo workings. Now, the hole that we drilled under the Jinja veins was very successful. I'll show you that one in a moment. The one at the north end of the Shui vein, that one basically showed us where the end of that part of the system is. So we didn't get meaningful results there, but it really gave us a good understanding of the geology and where it's truncated there. And then we had very positive results under the Ryuo vein system as well. So now I'm going to take you to a blow up of the Jinja vein area and just show you what we found. So this is a cross section of just the Jinja vein workings. And so what you've got here is a mine that was being operated on 6 different levels right up till 1943 when it was closed by the government. And the lowest level, the 6th level, would have been the lowest level of the mine because it coincided with where the water table is located. And they didn't have significant pumping capacity at that time. So even though these veins, because these are fairly vertical veins, would extend much deeper, they wouldn't be able to mine them because of the lack of pumping capacity. Now, after the war, after the government had closed the mine and taken the workers away, Sumitomo came through this region and they entered level 4. And I'm just going to highlight this. So they entered level 4 right there. And then they went into this adit, and the adit or tunnel hosted a vein that was about 0.5 meter wide. And so they sampled it right in along the area, right in along the tunnel or adit, and just the red area that I'm highlighting there alone. When they assayed this, that was 72 meters that averaged over 40 grams per ton. So this is the same types of grade that you're finding at the Hishikari gold mines. And then as they went deeper, they also found higher grades, etc. So what we did was the logical thing here. We stepped back and we thought, well, these are veins. These are fairly vertical veins. So let's drill under the deepest workings of the mine to see what happens to the vein. And so we drilled deeper, about 50 meters under the workings. And the results that we came up with there were significant. And let me explain this to you. So if up at the area that we highlighted here on level 4, if that area was about half a meter wide of a vein and it was averaging 40 grams per ton, what we were trying to find out was, as these veins get deeper, do they get wider? Do they get thinner? What happens to the gold grade? And so when we drilled this new hole now, our first new hole, we came up with an intersection that was 4.9 meters of 12 grams, which you might say, well, that seems a lot lower than what they were encountering up above. But that was a much wider interval than half a meter. It was almost 5 meters, so almost 10 times. But within that, we had an interval that was just over half a meter at almost 60 grams per ton. So what we're finding is the veins getting wider as it's getting deeper, and the grades are getting higher. We're also finding that rock that maybe the old-time miners wouldn't have observed or thought about, which doesn't look as bright white as the quartz vein itself, but the rock that just contains that, or just is on the periphery there, was also running very well in terms of gold. So that was a really important discovery for us. And so that first hole, and I'll just show you a cross section of that. So here's the vein. So now what we're looking at here is, this is that Jinja vein. So there's the Jinja vein. The very lowest level, there's level 6 of the workings, was right here. And our drill hole drilled 50 meters below, and we encountered a wider vein with higher grades. So that bodes very well for our drilling program and the potential for making, a more significant discovery here. So what have we done next? Well, I'm going to take you back here. So as I mentioned, we drilled our first 3 holes, one under the Jinja vein, one at the north end of the Shui vein system here, and then the third one down here under the Ryuo veins. Now, this one also had similar results down the Ryuo vein as well. Since then, what we've done is, I'm just going to take this off and put this back on for you. What we've done is now we've drilled our next 3 holes. So for our following 3 holes, we drilled a hole right here, which basically is about 50 meters along strike from that first hole that we went on. So we want to see, does this vein extend along strike? We're also drilling another hole, or we drilled another hole that goes about 50 meters long strike to the northeast. So now we'll have a sense of where the vein sits over about 100 meters distance. In addition to that, we also drilled under another hole here, under another area of workings that we had not previously drilled into. And so those 3 holes that I've just described now are now at the ALS lab. We're moving quickly with the assay results, and we expect to have those out before Christmas. And I will also highlight for you that the discovery hole, or our first hole that we made up at the Jinja vein here, when we drilled this hole down here and also had significant results, that distance is about 550 meters. So that really gives us some great running room, and again shows us the potential for this whole system. So we're very optimistic. We've got 3 drill rigs running there now, because we followed up the 3 holes that we've completed, the first 3 holes, with the second 3 holes that I just highlighted, and now we're drilling another 5 holes. So again, our drilling is based on success. We're very happy with what we've seen from the assays, what we're seeing visually, and we're moving ahead with more drilling in this prospect area. So that takes us through the Ryuo prospect. And again, As soon as we have that opportunity, we'll then move off to these other prospect areas. But the way it's looking now is we may be drilling Ryuo right through to the end of the year, the end of the season. And then as soon as possible, early in the new year, which is probably in the April-May timeframe, we'll be in drilling these other prospects that I've highlighted on this slide. Okay, so let me just move on now. Okay, so I wanted to talk to you about our share structure, where it stands today. And there's a couple of important points that I'd like to bring to your attention. So as I mentioned, in July this year, we concluded our $17 million financing. And so our share structure is now as follows. We have 55% of our shares are held by institutions, and some of the very best institutions in the world. And this was done with a real intention. These institutions that hold our shares are really holding what I'd call toehold or small positions in our company, with a view that in the future, hopefully we'll be building a mine with Barrick or Newmont or ourselves or with other third parties, and we'll need to come up with the capital required for our portion of the mine build. And we now have such a strong institutional set of investors that, with sort of a handful of phone calls, I think we can put that capital together to be able to fund our portion of a mine build. And those include BlackRock, RCF from Denver, the Donald Smith Value Fund from New York, and Libra from New York, Equinox, who is now our largest shareholder at 15%, Rego from Australia, Rothschilds from Europe. We have a very, very strong group of institutional investors. Newmont, as I mentioned earlier on, is not only our potential partner with the right of first refusal on the two projects and the technical support that they provide us, but that's in part because they hold a 10% equity stake in our business. And then, of course, management holds a stake at 7%. And so our public float has really shrunk down to 28% now. And institutional investors have even been tempted and have stepped into our public market and have bought on market there as well. So our market capitalization is approximately $60 million. We do have a strong warrant position outstanding now, and those warrants are all exercisable at 40 cents a share. And the options are a blended number at about 36 cents a share, I believe. So moving on from there, and maybe I'll come back to this slide in a moment. I really want to talk about a change that has just occurred at the end of last week at our annual general meeting to our board of directors. So we've had a very strong board of directors since we were founded, but we've also recognized that we are pretty geologist heavy, which makes sense when you're moving into a new country and advancing a number of projects there. But we really wanted to diversify in a number of areas that included ESG, that included transactional experience, that included international relations. And so our board brought on three new board members were elected. So the incumbent directors at our board meeting were myself, Mitsuhiko Yamada, who is also our representing director in Japan, and my mentor. He was previously the chief executive of Sumitomo Corporation, in charge of their global minerals division. He's one of the most respected senior mining executives in Japan, and has a wealth of relationships in country. In addition to him was Paul Harbage, one of our incumbents. Paul Harbage came up through the ranks with Mark Bristow at Rand Gold in Africa. That was, of course, the predecessor to the Rand Gold Barrick collaboration or combination. Paul ultimately ran the exploration group in Africa, and they made a number of significant discoveries there that made Rand Gold one of the most successful mining companies listed on the London Stock Exchange. Paul left Rand Gold, went to Gold Corp, and led the global exploration group, and ultimately identified Japan as a potential destination, but then found out quickly that Japan Gold was already there, and so that's how we built the Gold Corp / Newmont relationship. And Murray Flanagan has been with us for some long time, an expert in finance and the chairman of our audit committee. But the three new directors that I wanted to bring to your attention were, first of all, Ian Burney. Now, Ian Burney has been the Canadian ambassador to Japan for the last 5 years. He stepped down just a little earlier this year. Ian is a wealth of knowledge and experience in Japan, having been raised there from the age of 1 till about 9 or 10 years of age. And interestingly enough, and it must run in the family, his father was previously Canada's first Japanese-speaking ambassador to Japan. And so definitely runs in the family. So very pleased to have Ian join us. And he's got an ongoing interest in Japan, and we're delighted to have him. Michael Carrick is a very senior mining executive that is not as well known in sort of a household name in different circles, but has been incredibly successful. Michael has built 7 mines on 5 different countries, in 5 different countries. He's currently the chairman of a company called RTG Mining, which is an Australian listed company. But prior to that, he was part of the combination that formed B2 Gold, along with Clive Johnson, a $4.5 billion merger that occurred in 2013. And the assets that Michael Carrick's group, which was a company called CGA Mining, brought to the table were worth about $1.3 billion. And it included what is today the largest gold mine in the Philippines. He's also got a very strong background as an accountant. And so again, we'll bring that additional expertise, but has been very transactional. That bodes well for hopefully future discussions we'll have with suitors. The third person that we're very, again, delighted to have join us is Tanika Hirsch. Now, Tanika is a lawyer. She was the managing partner and managing member at White and Case, which is a very well-known London, England law firm, both in London and also leading their mining group in Johannesburg. She ultimately then went to Fasken Martin O'Dumoulin as one of the senior mining lawyers in their group. She runs their ESG Global Steering Committee, but she's also done a number of significant transactions with Japanese trading houses. So great to have Tanika join us. So we've really got a diversified board that can help guide us in a variety of different areas as we now grow and mature. And that's a great support system for the company. So to move from there to our executive team, you may have seen this slide in the past. I really wanted to highlight 2 people on this slide. One is Takashi Kuriyama, who's our general manager of exploration, who works with Andrew Rowe, our country manager and VP of exploration. But with Takashi Kuriyama, he was previously the head of global exploration for Sumitomo Metal Mining. He was prior to that, or actually through that same period, he was on the Teck Resources board of directors. But prior to that, he was the general manager and chief geologist at the Hishikari gold mine in southern Kyushu. So he's got incredible insight into that area and has really helped us identify and select the portfolio that we've picked up in that region and elsewhere. The most recent addition was Tim Sharp. We just announced Tim Sharp as our chief geologist, but he'd been working with us since the beginning of this year. Now, Tim came to us from Barrick. Tim was the principal geologist for Barrick in Africa and in the Middle East. And with their support, he's left Barrick and now come and joined Japan Gold full-time. So again, a wealth of information, and we're really pleased to have him as part of our team going forward. And this is part of the group that will be assembled in Vancouver at that Barrick Alliance Summit in November. Now, 3 of our previous directors that didn't stand for re-election at this recent AGM this past week were Dr. Mike Andrews, John Carlisle, and Bob Gallagher. They've now all joined our board of advisors and Dr. Steve Garwood to really provide a very strong underpinning of technical support. So we've got a well-organized company with a lot of significant experience behind it, and that's really very, very helpful for us. So I'm just going to go back to one other slide here and just talk about where we are. So I'd like to finish with this slide because Japan Gold is indeed a very unique company. We're one of the only companies in the world, and the only one that I can identify, that has the two largest gold miners, Barrick and Newmont, deeply embedded in our business. We've been able to take the first mover advantage in one of the safest geopolitical countries in the world, Japan, and secure 31 projects and dominate the major gold provinces in the country. We're well funded through the Barrick Alliance to advance the 29 projects and their evaluation. And we're now well funded to advance the projects outside the Barrick Alliance that Newmont's supporting with our recent financing. We put together a team that starts right from our board of directors, right through our management, right through to our drilling division of 20 people and our drilling rigs to be able to get the job done, and a team that has the support or that has the confidence of both Barrick and Newmont. So we've been able to put that all together. And we've got results. So we're showing results. We're identifying enormously high areas of gold through the Barrick Alliance, through the drill bit with our projects outside the Barrick Alliance. We're identifying areas that are highly prospective, and we're finding high grades of gold. So the future looks bright, and I look forward to regular news that will include drill results from our Ryuo drilling program, the outcome of our Barrick Alliance summit or workshop in November, and then the announcement of additional drilling programs. And finally, we're never standing still. So if we're finding areas that we really like in Japan, we'll continue to add to our portfolio and evaluate those areas as well as we zero in on the new discoveries to be made in the country. So that concludes my remarks, and I am happy to turn it back over to you, Tim, for your thoughts.
Great. Well, thank you very much, John, for a very informative presentation. And yeah, we'll now start the Q&A portion of the webinar. A reminder to everyone on the line, you can type your question to the chat box at any time. I already do have a few questions. First, what is the permitting process like for exploration in Japan, and what would it look like to develop a mine?
Great. Excellent question. And I'm going to say that I'll say this fairly quickly in terms of giving you a little bit of background on the permitting process. So if you were a new entrant wanting to go to Japan today, here's the steps. First of all, you go to Japan, you form a wholly owned subsidiary. And then once you got that wholly owned subsidiary, you have to become accredited. And by accredited, I mean you have to show that you have the technical ability, the financial ability, and you have the reputation to be able to apply for areas. And if the areas are open and you apply for them, then the government METI, the Ministry of Economy, Trade and Industry, will reserve that area for you. Now, when you've got an area reserved for you, they actually break it into blocks, and each block is about 350 hectares. And when you put a block, and then for a project, sometimes we have 20 blocks together. So a project area might sort of like a game of Tetris. You've got a whole bunch of blocks together. And you submit a rudimentary business plan that says, what kind of work are you going to do? How are you going to evaluate this? You know, mapping, geology, geophysics. So you then have an undetermined amount of time to evaluate those blocks. So there's no fixed time, and there's no carrying costs while you're in that reservation period. But you can't drill. So you can do everything right up to sort of trenching and drilling. Now, when you want to trench and drill, then you say, we'd like our prospecting rights now. And you can do it on a block by block basis. So you can be quite strategic. And at that point, the clock ticks. So you've got 6 years to evaluate with the drill bit and other means each block or a block. And then by the end of that 6 years, you've either decided to return it back to the government and relinquish it, or you've converted it to digging rights, or which are mining rights in Japan. The threshold to convert it to digging rights or mining rights is very low. So in some countries, you need a huge feasibility study, and it's really complex and costly. But in Japan, it's much more rudimentary than that. You will have had to have encountered precious metal mineralization that may be commercial sometime in the future. So it's, there's a lot of subjectivity there. So that's the process. The one important thing to understand is that in Japan, as opposed to, say, Finland, which I like to use as a contrast, because I like a company called Rupert Resources in Finland as an example. Well, in Finland, if you wanted to hold 2,270 square kilometers of mineralites like we have now, you would be paying tens of millions of dollars a year to the government just to hold on to that. In Japan, our carrying costs annually today for 2,270 square kilometers are approximately 40,000 US dollars. Huge difference, huge difference. So that's how the permitting process works in Japan. And that's number one. Number two is, if we were going to go forward to build a mine, what would the process be like? Well, the first thing is that we're not looking at large open pit mines in Japan. We're looking at small, high grade underground gold mines that are relatively shallow. So the permitting, and there's something very unique about Japan, because all the types of mines that we're looking for are low sulfidation epithermal gold mines, like Hishikari. And that, simply put, is quartz veins that are kind of 0.5 meter to 4 or 5 meters wide. And these are those white quartz veins that have gold and alluvium and silver in them. Now, in Japan, there's a unique circumstance where the quartz from those quartz veins is a valuable component of the smelters that exist in Japan. So after the Second World War, the Japanese built a number of copper smelters. There's 5 major copper smelters in Japan, where copper concentrates from Canada go to Japan in some cases. Those smelters are all, I'll say, desperate. They're really seeking out supplies of quartz because they need it in their smelter process. So in Japan, you can bring your quartz vein material out of a gold mine, but you don't need to build a processing facility if it's quartz, because the smelting companies will buy your ore, your run of mine ore. They'll take it away, and they'll pay basically what costs or what would cover the shipping costs. So they take your waste away, including the gold, and then they give you 90 to 95% of your gold back. What that does for your internal rate of return is it sends it through the roof, because you don't have the capex for your mine build. You don't have the longer permitting duration. It's much simpler. And you don't have the issue of waste disposal or storage. So that's a really unique benefit. So in my ideal world, we would be building underground mines that would be highly mechanized, if not completely mechanized. And we would be taking that material and we would be directly shipping it to the smelters and recovering our gold that way.
And another question here, but given that the company owns its own drill rig, what are your drilling costs like per meter? And how big is your in-country team?
Thanks. So when we went to Japan, we made the decision to be fully operational in Japan. And we made that for a number of reasons, but we wanted to know that our people, in collaboration with Japanese geologists and field assistants and support staff, so we've got a group of over 40 people in Japan that are working. We put that all together. Now, as part of that, we thought, well, who's going to do the drilling? And so we did experiment with utilizing Japanese drilling contractors, but we found a couple of things. First of all, they were scarce as hen's teeth because they were really involved in the geothermal industry, which is very active in Japan. So, and it's being subsidized by the government. So the geothermal companies are taking up most of the drilling capacity. Secondly, they hadn't done a lot of hard rock diamond core drilling like we'd need. So they didn't necessarily have the expertise to do that. Thirdly, they were incredibly conservative, which kind of equals slow. So we tried that initially. And when we calculated what our drilling costs were, they were running approximately $800 to $1,000 a meter. Okay. When the global average is certainly significantly lower than that. So at that point, we decided we're going to do it ourselves. So we bought 4 of our own diamond core drill rigs, 2 that are capable of going to about 450 meters, 2 that are capable of going to 750 meters. So that covers everything we need to do with the type of exploration we're doing. And then we built our own drilling division that now has 20 people in it. So we have a drilling division of 20 people. And that drilling division comes in from Indonesia. So they're specialists in operating these diamond core drill machines. They've done it for 15 or 20 years experience. So they're highly experienced, very efficient, very quick. And if they're in country and not drilling for us, they convert to field assistants at a lower rate, and then they move into the Barrick Alliance side of things. So it's not like we have to carry this massive, burden. We're very efficient about our staff and the roles that they take. In terms of our cost per meter, so on the most recent drilling that we're doing, and we're always sort of working and evaluating our cost, we've been able to get from the $800 to $1,000 a meter, we're down at about $300 a meter now. And that shows you the efficiency of using your own drilling division in a country that still is not equipped to do that because they don't even have labs there. So, we have to take the material and we ship it to international labs. And for our purposes, we use ALS and generally either in Australia or most specifically in Vancouver.
Great. And I guess we're getting close to an hour here, but I guess a question to kind of maybe round things out and a good one to finish off on. But just to review, what news would we expect to have over the coming weeks and months from Japan Gold?
Certainly. Well, again, I think hopefully we foreshadowed with that first news release that we put out on the 3 drill holes that were drilled at the Ryuo prospect. Those looked very, very interesting. So we know we have 3 more holes that are at the lab now. So those drilling results, as I mentioned, we'll have those before Christmas. That's our plan right now. And things could always happen at the labs, but we've been fortunate to be able to be quite efficient with our assaying, and so we'll work to that timetable. We have 5 more holes that are being drilled now as well. So as soon as we can get those results out, this should start to hopefully build and expand on our understanding of this Ryuo prospect and hopefully be positive. So we're looking forward to that. There's a lot of time and attention by our team on the Barrick Alliance, gathering more information on the other 9 projects. Because I mentioned we've got interesting information from 20 projects now, 39 significant gold anomalies, but let's see what happens from the other 9 projects as we collate that material for our November Barrick Alliance Summit. Once we have that completed, I think we've got to put out an update and talk about where we're at and how we're proceeding. And it'll be interesting because if Barrick makes a decision to drop some properties, which we fully expect they're going to do, that allows us the opportunity then to consider how we take those projects and announce other joint ventures or announce programs that we want to do ourselves. So we're very happy with that. And I set everybody's expectations low. I said if Barrick likes 1 project out of 29, that'd be great. I mean, if they like 1, if they like 2 or 3, boy, that would be that'd be a home run. And so we'll see. We don't know yet till we concluded our reviews and they make their decisions. But I'm optimistic. So we'll have news coming through that as well. And then again, we are proactive. We're always looking at other areas or areas that we've discovered through this evaluation process. And so I'm hopeful that we'll continue to expand our portfolio.
Great. Well, I would like to thank John Proust again from Japan Gold for presenting today. And thank you everyone out there for tuning in. Just a reminder that Red Cloud Securities will be back tomorrow, Tuesday, October 26th, when our webinar series continues as we present Guyana Metals Corp at 2 p.m. Eastern Time. And have a great rest of your day.
Thank you, Tim.